Hi there soapsters. So in today's tutorial it's going to be a much different one. There's going to be no soap involved, but today we're actually looking at doing soap scrapers. So in the background here you can see the actual printers going on, and they are an STL file which I'm printing out on my 3D printer. Now this video is about how I make my scrapers. So this is using Adobe Illustrator, Fusion 360 and Prusa Slicer, which are the three programs I use in order to get these scrapers done. Now, there are plenty of programs out there available for you to use for exactly this. And you need to use the ones that you are most comfortable using. If that is an issue and you feel like the soap scraper STL files are something that you might want to just download so you can print them out yourself, let me know, and I can obviously then add those onto my website. There will be a small charge for them, obviously, because they are a thing that needs a little bit of work on, but I'm more than happy to consider some scrapers there in various widths, and also for you to be able to kind of size up and down as you need within your programs. So if that's something that you are interested in, please let me know. But until that point, we'll crack on with the tutorial. And I'm sorry for all the people that were expecting a soap tutorial. I was requested that I showed how I do my soap scrapers. So this is that video. So without further ado, let's crack on with the videos. Okay, so I'm in Adobe Illustrator here. Now, not everyone may have access to that, and I understand this, but I'm going to show you the process that I use to take my little picture here from a little picture through to a file ready to be scrapers. Now, what I've got here is basically a soap the size I think the soap is going to be. Now, the mould I'm going to use for this is my little green one, and I know that that's going to be 70 millimeters by 74 millimeters, or 7 centimeters by 7.5 centimeters. So I'm basing my scrapers on this size here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to actually use stamps to do the eyes and the mouth with. So I'm going to print those out separately, not in this tutorial. So all I'm going to do is move those out of the way, along with the mouth. We'll just move those over to there, and that leaves us with these shapes. Now, when you're dealing with scraping soaps and getting things to kind of work for you, what you need to think about are underhangs, overhangs, and how you're going to kind of get this to fill up. So you have to think about your shapes. So if you've got something like, and what I'm just going to do is create another quick shape here. So let's say that's our soap, and I wanted to do, say, a very quick mountain shape in it like this. Okay, so that's going to be our mountain. And we then wanted to kind of scrape this and get it filled up. But I then wanted to do like a cloudy layer at the top, and the cloudy layer is going to be a bit like this. Move this around a little bit, just to give us a little bit of shape. So we've got clouds at the top there, and we've got our mountains here. What we want to do with this arrangement is actually take the whole thing and flip it upside down. So you would pour your bottom layer, you would scrape these, which will give you a better scrape, fill that up to here, scrape the mountains out, and then when you fill that up, it will go into all these little nooks and crannies, and you won't get any air bubbles or anything like that. So thinking about that with our little octopus here, all of his little tentacles down at the bottom here will be better off being filled up. Now, what we do have to be a little bit careful of is we've got like an overhang here and here. Now, that could cause us some problems. But what we might do is actually just bring the sand up a little bit, and then that should take care. But what we don't want to have is like anything that has like a severe overhang. So if our little chappy here, his leg kind of did this, and this is an extreme version, but see how we've got soap having to come in and then come back up. This would be an issue. So we can't really have that, but this is pretty much flat. Take that back. And this is pretty much flat. So everything here should fill up quite nicely. And the reason I brought the sand of the bottom up a little bit is because realistically, I want to not have to scrape a dome like this too big, because we are going to have to make like a separate scraper for this dome at the top here. And that's really what we're looking for. So what I'm going to do is take my shape here, zoom out a little bit so you can see everything. And I'm just going to copy that down into here. And this is where we're going to start making our scraper. So our first scraper is going to be essentially the tentacles. So we're going to pour our yellow, then scrape our tentacles, and then bring the blue in at the top. So the first thing I'm going to do is actually select this. I've got it grouped at the minute, so I'm going to ungroup that. I'm going to select these two, and they're currently a width of 70. Now 70 is the most, the biggest size I can get, and I don't really want to have to kind of scrape these scrapers down or have to sand the edges down. So I'm going to take that in to about 67 millimeters and just shrink the sides in a little bit, so that if I have my soap mold here again, just make that a different color. Okay. You can see now that we've got a little bit of gap either side. So as we're scraping, it's not going to scrape the edges of the mold too much. And then it should just flow through quite neatly. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make the yellow layer come up to the top of the blue. I'm going to get rid of the blue at the moment. And then I'm going to bring the bottom of this up to around about here. Okay. So I know this is all going to be in the right place. And I know that because I should really keep the side. If I pop this back in, you can see that we're going to scrape out this white space here. So it's the white space I'm looking to try and scrape out. So what we're then going to do is just take that and group that, and that's our first scraper. But now what you can do is you can extend this top section here up, and you can put various bits and pieces in it. But because I know the size of my mold, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a piece like that. And now I want to know the size of this. This is really important for later on. So let's call that 100 millimeters. That's 10 centimeters wide. I want to make sure I'm going to just turn that into a different color so you can see. So I want to make sure that between those two, I have a gap of 0 mil, that and that are aligned centrally. And then what I am going to do is just curve those edges off. So I know that the width of this is going to be 100 mil. That's really important later on when we move into putting this into our 3D modeling software and then into our slicing software. We're going to want to scale this up a little bit so it does fit. So as long as I know that that measurement is 100 mil, I can then make sure that that works. And the only other thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to give this a number 1. And we're going to pop that into here. Expand that. Now, the reason I put the 1 in is because I want to be able to know which scraper is next because they're all going to be the same color. So just so I know what is going to happen. So that is our scraper number 1. Okay. So we've got our scraper in here. I'm just going to pull that to the side here, and we're going to do our second scraper. Our second scraper, now this one is done, is so easy. We just copy that across, so it's exactly the same sizes. So we've got 100 ml here. I'm just going to take that out, and let's make that a 2. Okay. And then we're just going to take that out of there. So we've got a 1 and a 2. And the number 2 is really easy, but we are going to do it slightly differently. We've got our bottom color, and that bottom color can be any color. And our bottom color comes up to here. What we want on this scrape is we want to make this a bulge here. So we've got one of 2 things we can do. We can either bring this down a little bit, but I don't really want to have too much kind of going on in the top, or we can bring this up a little bit. So the idea is that this scraper here is at the height we want our sand to be, but we don't want them to be the same height. So if I just bring a little measure in there, you can see there's a slight gap between this scraper and this scraper. So we are going to take a little bit of this sandy color off when we make our top piece. What it does mean is that we can flood this entire area with the pink, pull it up into the round here, and then make sure we scrape it away down to our sand color, which is going to fill up to this side. So if that makes sense, you always want to be kind of taking out a little bit more of the sand color than you've actually poured, so that you can get a really nice crisp line and you won't get any pink seeping out here. And that's important to do with these ones. So on this one, we just want to select the shape, and this one I'm going to take that bit away, and there's the top of our octopus. So I'm now going to select those and bring those together as one scraper, and that one as our second scraper. So this is a really simple scrape. So we're going to do 2 scrapes. The first one is going to be a little bit more complicated just because of some of the shapes we've got going, but as long as we do it nice and slowly, that will absolutely work. And if you wanted to, you could do this one back upside down, and to basically do that, what you would do is we'll bring that down and I'll show you. Turn the whole thing upside down and work this way. So we're going to take our scraper this way, and we're going to basically have that like that. And then we're going to pull that down a little bit there. Those together, minus those. And that would basically be the opposite scrapers. And again, if we make this one 100, pull up a little bit. Into there, and just 2 there. Pull this one across. Into there, a little bit. There you have the scrapers in the opposite direction. So you can do it either way. And looking at this might actually be a better way of doing it, but I'm going to go with this one just to keep things nice and simple. Okay, so we've gotten to this point, and now what we need to do is actually put this into a 3D software in order to create our STL files. So I do this with a 3D piece of software called Fusion. You can use any software that you feel comfortable using. I like Fusion because it is quite, the learning curve on it is quite big, but once you've got that learning in, it's really nice to use. There are other options out there. The Fusion is free as long as you're using it for your own purposes. There are other ones out there that you can use, but I'm going to show you that how I do this in Fusion. So these are now just images. What I'm going to do is open up a new file. Now these can be either RGB, they can be CMYK. The colors really don't matter because we are just using these as a base. So I'm going to copy my first scraper. I'm going to paste it into here. Okay, make sure that we're still at 100, and I'm just going to fit that down a little bit, but I like to just pull it out a smidge. And there we have our first scraper. Now, in order to make this into a layer that we can then get printed on the machine, I need to take that and I need to save it as a SVG file. So you must save this out as an SVG file, and we'll put Octo Scraper 1 and we'll save that down. Okay, so now that one's saved. You can do exactly the same thing, or what you can do, delete that one out, copy, paste that one in. That will be absolutely fine. File, save as. You don't want to save, you want to save as Octo Scraper 2. SVG, save that out. And there we have our scraper saved out, ready for the next section, which is going to Fusion 360 and create some vector files for these scrapers. Right, so we are back into Fusion here, and what we're going to do now is turn our flat design into a 3D file. So we can then bring it into a third program and create a basically create a scraper from it. So what I'm going to do is jump into my sketch section, and I'm doing this on a flat plane so that when it goes into the 3D software, it'll actually sit nicely here. I'm then going to go to my insert here, and I'm going to go to SVG, insert from my computer, and Octo Scraper 1, open. So it puts our scraper, or the outline of our scraper, which is an SVG file, in here. Okay, you can leave it exactly where it is. And actually, I'm going to move it a little bit. I'm going to just move it into the middle here, like that. And that's what I just want to do with that one. I'm going to finish the sketch, and it brings us to here. I select the main part of the scraper. I don't worry about the number because I'm actually going to just leave that as a hollow, and that will just then create the number inside. Go up to my extrude, and in my distance here, I'm going to put a 1.5 millimeter distance. Okay. Okay, that. And now if we look at that from the top, that's our scraper. Look at it from just a kind of 3/4 angle. You can see that we've got our scraper here. So what we'll then do is we can soften off some of these edges. So like these two here, I just want to make them a little bit softer. So we're going to chamfer them a little bit. I'll go to a top view so you can just see that there. And I'm just going to give them like maybe like a 1/2 mil chamfer just on this edge here. And then I think the rest of that should actually be okay. Just don't want those scraping in. Okay, and that is our first scraper. So I'm going to save that out. And all we do is we save that. And we're going to do Octo Scraper 1 and save. So this is just one body. This is all one thing. If I go back to our sketch here, we click on the bottom again, and then we go to insert SVG. We'll go to our Octo 2 scraper. Okay, I'm just going to zoom out a little bit. So we want to flip that so it's facing the same direction, and then just move it so that we say come into about there, finish that sketch, come into our view, 1.5, done. Okay, that one, and that one, fill it 0.5, just to round those off. Okay. Let me get that one out there. There we go. And we've then got our two scrapers. So we've got number 1 and number 2 from the top. They look like that. From the front, you can see we've got one slightly higher than the other. But again, it's no problem. If you wanted to, you can move it down. It's not going to make any difference when it goes into the other software. So we're just going to save that. Okay, so we've got them saved in here, and that should change in a minute. And now the next thing that we do is we need to save this as an STL file. And that's really easy from here. So you must have it saved. We export it, Octoscraper. We just want to put this into the right folder, and we want to select STL file. Click on export, and that will export our Octoscrapers as an STL file, and we'll jump over into our 3D slicing software. Right, we're into the final stretch of this now. Now, this can go quite quickly, or I do it over a few nights. So we're into the last bit now. So we're into our third software here, which is Prusa Slicer. Now, there are lots of slicing tools out there. Find the one that works for you, but this is one that works for me, and I enjoy it, and I seem to get the best prints out of it. So we are going to import an STL file. So remember, we've just saved an STL file, and we've got our Octoscrapers STL file here, and we're going to open that up, and it'll pop them onto our little thing here. Now, I'm going to actually just select this and then split into objects. So we should be able to pick up each one separately. Now, this is the really important bit. I'm going to swing this round to a top view, hopefully like that. So if you remember when we first started this whole project, I said you needed to understand what width this was in order for everything to match. Now, if we go down to our X, Y, and Z values, we have the height is correct. The Y is not correct, and the X is not correct. So what we want to do, keep your scaling on and type in your 100 millimeters there, and it will increase the size of that one up to the size of the scraper. Now, if anyone out there can tell me why it doesn't keep the sizing that you have from Illustrator into Fusion, and I've tried looking at ways of doing it, but I cannot find it, and this is the easiest way I've found to do it. So what we'll do is we'll select the second one, so you see that it goes from yellow to green when it's selected, and put 100 in there. So our sizing should now be up to the size that we want it. If you think, well, I just want to give myself a little bit of wiggle room, you can make that number slightly smaller, and you can see our millimeters have gone up to 2. So if I move it around this way, we've got a 2 millimeter. Now, if you wanted to drop that down a wee bit, you can do. And the way you do that is just uncheck your button here, going for 1.5. And if I swing that this way, you'll see that we have an ever so slightly thinner one here than here. But everything else, if I go back, should match up. So it's 100, it's 1.5, and that's 2. But I will keep it at 2 for the purposes of this. It'll probably be easier to see it. When it prints out. So that's done. Now what we can do is we can just go down to here and slice now, and we shouldn't get any issues here. You can see that it just basically is going to print those 2 out. And because we've lined it in the right orientation, if I zoom in a little bit here, you'll see that all the layers go crosswise at a diagonal, this way and this way. So you'll get a stronger print out of it. And then all we need to do now is export that code here to our little card here. We'll save that onto our card, and then that is ready to go. And I'll pop that into the 3D printer in a moment, and we can see that print. And so what we do is we pop this onto our 3D printer here, and we just get this printed out, which took, I think for these ones, about an hour and a half, something like that. So they are very, very easy to kind of get scripts with and use. Now, this is the entire process that I use. Please let me know in the description below if you think that an STL file, so simply download the STL file and then pop it onto your 3D printer to print, would be useful. And if that would be useful, what sort of scrapers would you like to see? Just standard shapes and waves, or would you like specific objects to be seen within that particular scraper? Please do let me know in the description box below about that. And so here are the final scrapers. If you've enjoyed this video, please give it a like. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. It really does help me grow, and it helps me to keep making videos for all of you. Don't forget that when you do subscribe to the channel, click the little bell icon to get notified when the next video is uploaded. And until next time, soapsters, have a great day, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.